There hasn't been a Pokemon show or game rated higher than E for everyone, but what if by some miracle Pokemon decided to release a Pokemon game or anime with a teen or even mature rating? What would the story look like, or how would it even play out? Well, that is what today's video is all about. My name is Pokey, and this is What If Pokemon Was More Mature. So the way this is going to work is simple. I'm going to basically go through and scrap up what I believe is a more mature Pokemon series and what it would look like in terms of story. So anyways, let's get started, shall we? So how would the new and improved Pokemon anime look like? And I'm going to just rip off the band-aid here. There will be blood, no questions asked. And before y'all come at me, no, I am not making the story edgy in any way, shape, or form. What I mean by a more mature Pokemon show, I'm not asking for the boys, but in Pokemon format, okay? No. What I'm saying is Pokemon needs to be more in tune with the manga. You see, the manga is a lot more mature than the entire Pokemon franchise as a whole. The manga contains dialogue that is much more insulting and heavy than whatever the anime cooks up, or even the games for that matter. Not only that, but the manga can get pretty gory and dark as well. This new mature Pokemon series should just be more in tune with the Pokemon manga above all else. So if the manga is able to have blood in their series, then the bare minimum should also be done to this new animated series. The gore doesn't need to be excessive either. The only reason we're adding blood is to add more stakes and realism to the Pokemon series as a whole. The one issue that the Pokemon franchise struggles with is the fact that there is barely any stakes when it comes to Pokemon battles that aren't tournament related or friendly competition. Pokemon should look way more hurt and even bleed to showcase how serious a Pokemon battle is during a fight with one of our characters whenever they're in trouble, whether that be a fight against an evil team leader or just a battle against a really strong Pokemon. This adds a layer of worry going into the series where you never know what might happen for our future protagonists and characters, since their Pokemon could get either gravely injured or even perish in battle. This would make the Pokemon series way more emotional because imagine a Pokemon dying during battle trying to protect their trainer. We can see stuff that we have learned through the dex entries actually happen in the show. We can finally see things such as Gardevoir's last hurrah with summoning a freaking black hole in order to protect their master. I'm just saying this allows so much more room to explore all of the dex entries that can't actually be shown since, you know, Pokemon is a kids show. So overall, I think showing blood would not make Pokemon edgy, but rather add a layer of realism and faithful adaptation as far as dex entries like Gardevoir goes. Now that we have gotten that out of the way though, we should now create our story. So when I think of what a more mature Pokemon story would look like, I think that Pokemon does a great job at doing that already. Except their dialogue and execution is made in a way that kids don't get, you know, traumatized. But instead, I'm going to be making the story a lot more clear and straightforward while also making the dialogue way more heavy. But we're gonna obviously need an evil villain team since, you know, it's Pokemon. So what would a villain team look like in Pokemon if it was rated PG-13 or even higher? Well, here's my idea. So the villain team has to be pure evil with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Unlike other villain teams like Lysander, who actually had decent intentions, just went about it with, you know, genocide. Our main villain is going to be someone who is just pure evil for the sake of being evil, because, you know, I think we need more evil characters in the media since Disney clearly can't do it themselves. So what is this main villain's intentions, you might ask? Well, it's simple really, just becoming a dictator and controlling the entire region with his grunts. Basically, the setting will take place in a gloomy region stripped of its once prosperous state due to the collapse of the government that controlled the region, which caused a huge battle that even included the region's gym leaders and champion. But even still, they weren't strong enough to face off against our main villain and their ever-growing army. Now, for the sake of understanding this story, we're gonna give our characters names. So for our main villain, we will name him Braun. I don't know, man. It's the first thing I came up with. So because the Harkin region is now overthrown by Team Revolution, everyone now lives in fear because essentially their livelihood is that of North Korea. And in this region, there are barely any trainers as obtaining Pokemon is highly illegal except for Team Revolution, of course. But amongst the darkest depths of sorrow, courage eventually shows its light. And with it comes a group of rebels led by our main character, Bob. Now, because this game is more mature, I feel like one way we could differentiate this show from the rest of the Pokemon series is by changing the formula as much as possible. And that means that our MC isn't a child, but instead a 21-year-old man. Our cast of characters should be young adults, which will help make the series feel vastly different while also giving a fresh take on the series. For the cast to be kids, it would feel not only very off-putting, but just straight up stupid, because why would a 14-year-old kid be the one to lead a rebel group? That makes no sense. It makes more logical sense that young or older adults would be in charge of this rebel group, since it would be stupid to involve children in this. But you might be asking, Pokey, how would Pokemon battles work? Well, the battles themselves would be related to the story, meaning gym battles or Pokemon League fights won't exist since the region is under new management. Battles wouldn't be rare per se, but rather a lot less than what you would expect from a Pokemon show. This would also help develop future fight scenes and give a huge upgrade to the animation. Part of the reason Pokemon doesn't have MAPPA levels of animation on a consistent basis is because they don't have to put too much effort into the animation since their target audience is for kids. Shows like One Piece or Demon Slayer put out these insane fight scenes because people love to see them and can appreciate good animated fights. But when your target audience is for kids, you don't really need to do that. Kids just don't pay attention to the animation, and their imagination does wonders for them already. But now that we have a more mature Pokemon series, the target audience will want to see better animated Pokemon battles, so the way the battles would work are different because of how the story is tailored. For starters, our cast of characters would be trained in secret by experienced trainers who weren't captured during the war between Team Revolution and the region's government, while the other battles would be against Team Revolution themselves. And one amazing thing that comes out of all of this are the Pokemon themselves. Pokemon are incredibly kind creatures, for the most part. And although you know Pokemon like Dragonite are nice and kind, this series will highlight a lot of Pokemon's traits and habits because of how gloomy the vibe of the series will be. You'll be able to smile at seeing all these different types of Pokemon just trying to cheer up their trainers. Because remember that just like how dog is man's best friend, the same thing applies to Pokemon. The Rebels Pokemon are the hope in this series, and their traits will complement each other. These Pokemon will be the light that keeps these trainers going, which adds that layer of worry that I mentioned earlier. These Pokemon know what they're fighting for, and although they know they might perish in battle, they do it anyway, because of the strong bond with their trainers. They will gladly leap in harm's way because they want to protect their happiness as well, which will make for some heartbreaking moments in future episodes. So moving on, how will the Rebels fight back against Team Revolution? Well, the story will focus around their plans for taking back the region, by overtaking certain cities under Team Revolution's control. And although they are severely outnumbered, they can win back the region through hope. You see, the main reason how a dictator controls their country is through fear and other manipulative methods. Team Revolution does the same thing, so if the Rebels can bring back the hope that was once lost, they can gain more people to join their cause. But of course, actions speak louder than words. You see, the people need to actually know that the Rebels actually have a shot in taking Team Revolution down, because otherwise they won't have hope in them at all and continue to live under Team Revolution in fear of losing their lives. But what kind of hope can the Rebels bring to the table? Well, that's where Bob comes in, our main character who's the leader of the Rebels, and for a good reason. You see, Bob has a secret weapon to fight back against Braun and the rest of Team Revolution. That being his own Pokemon, Shaman. Now I know what you're gonna say, Shaman? That's the world's last hope, is Shaman? Yeah, we're all cooked. But you guys need to understand that Shaman is actually the best Pokemon for this series. You see, Shaman's powers are a part of nature, and he can turn a ruined land into a beautiful field filled with life and happiness. This Pokemon would be perfect because through Shaman's actions and kindness, it will start to spread throughout the region. And Shaman isn't weak either. After all, it has the power of flight and can deck the average Pokemon easily. I feel like I would want a Pokemon who's underrated and hasn't gotten a lot of time on the big screen, and I feel like Shaman is that Pokemon. And through excessive back and forth between the Rebels and Team Revolution, the Rebels will eventually, through sheer willpower, reign supreme. And then the epilogue of the series would be the time to rebuild, with Shaman filling the land with love and prosperity. Now, people will die in the process, as that's just realistic, but they wouldn't die without a reason. And each death would serve as a catalyst for the future of the region. Now, we just talked about a lot of things, but class, what have we learned from this What If series? Well, I'll tell you, many of the things I've mentioned are just stuff that really expands on what Pokemon already does. A much bigger animation budget, more violence to add more stakes and emotion to the story, and adding a more serious story that separates it from all the other Pokemon series we have seen before. Pokemon series can be very dark, and I have a video planned about Team Flare as well, but they just can't really go too far because, well, it's a kid's game. But maybe one day I'll get that dream. Nah, I'm kidding, it's never gonna happen. But guys, what do you think of the story that I created? Do you guys like it or do you guys hate it? What would you guys want from a more mature Pokemon series that you don't get to see in the actual anime? Let me know in the comments below. I read a bunch of my comments, so I'm really interested to see what you guys cook up. But that's all Yuki wrote, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.